Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to the second episode, or let's say, second webinar series. Last week, it was just me, where you could probably see me live coding and teaching you how to build a portfolio. And today, I have with me Favorite, who is my colleague, and both of us will be talking about GraphQL APIs. And if you are a beginner, or if you're somebody who is just getting started with GraphQL APIs, if you stick around with us for an hour from now, I'm sure that you'll not only take away the basics and the fundamentals, you'll also learn how to actually use the APIs in production. I am very excited. What about you, Favorite? How are you feeling it? What do you Are you excited? Is this your first live stream on Hashnote? Tell us.
Yeah, this is my first live stream on Astronaut, and I'm very excited to take everyone through this journey of learning about GraphQL and everything all about GraphQL. Yes.
Amazing. So, just asking before we start, I see that we have Mihan on the chat. Hi, Mihan. And for everybody who is joining us, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them by adding comments below. Favorite and I will take few comments and we will just answer them right on the live stream. If we cannot, we are also very active on X or Twitter, LinkedIn, and or all other social media platforms. So if you want to ask any questions, you are more than welcome to do that. So I'll just take 1 or 2 more minutes. Just maybe you all can introduce yourselves on the chat, where you're joining from, what time is it, and maybe a line or two about if you have used GraphQL before and what do you think about GraphQL in general. I think while people drop the comments, maybe I can tell you where I'm joining from. And I'm joining in from India. It's around 8 p.m. IST here. And when it comes to GraphQL, I think I started using it pretty late in my career. But now that I use it very frequently, I love it. So that's my point of view. What about you, Favorite? Where are you joining from, and what are your views on GraphQL?
Yes, so I'm joining from Nigeria, Lagos, and I believe the very first time I so the very first time I used GraphQL was to get into a job. So I was applying for a job where the requirements was that I must know how to like set up GraphQL, and I had to set up the server, I had to set up the clients, then I built a demo application using GraphQL. It was a lot to learn at once and to wrap my head
Yeah.
around it. But yeah, I had to like build that mini project just to show um the person hiring that yes, I could work
Yeah.
with this, and then I got the job. Yes.
That's amazing. I love that story. Any of you here, if you have any such story, please feel free to drop them in the comments below. I love reading stories personally, and I would probably love to read them and also cite them in whenever I'm talking to juniors or people who are learning tech for the first time. So that's from us, and I think, Favorite, we are good to get started. What do you think?
Yeah, let's get started.
Amazing. So I'll start with presenting my screen, and just a second while I do that. Okay, oops. I hope you can see my screen. Favorite, let me know if it's all there.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Great. So, hi everybody, welcome again. This is me, Hemantika, and with me I also have Favorite. And today's topic is GraphQL 101. We'll talk about the basics, the fundamental concepts, and we will also show you how you can build with GraphQL APIs in production. And at any point, if you feel that you are not able to follow what we are discussing here, we have also written an article on it, which Favorite will share on the chat. So if you want to follow, you can always go ahead and follow the article. So we have both the options for you. Cool, getting started. Hi, it's me. I'm Hemantika, and I'm working as a developer advocate at Hashnode. I have been in the developer advocacy job role for almost three and a half years now, And I love tech. I love Gen AI. That's what I build on the side over the weekends. And if you want to know more about me, I hope you're all on your laptops. So go to your terminal and type npx space hello hyphen hemantika. That's a little package that I created, and I like to show it off on all webinars or sessions that I'm taking. So try it out, and if at any point you would want to do something like this, you can always the repository is open source, so you can go ahead and use that for inspiration. That's all about me. Now over to you, favorite. Who are you? Tell us about yourself.
Yes, hello everyone. So I am favorite Jome. Yeah, and unlike Hamantika, I don't have a wonderful library where you could run on the terminal to find out about it. Yes, so these days I love learning about Web3, right, and AI. Those are the new technologies that has caught my attention. Yes, and you can find me on Facebook, Hashnode, of course, and GitHub. Yes.
Amazing. Thank you so much, favorite, for introducing yourself. And with that, I'll get started. But again, if you have any questions about GraphQL or any questions about Hashnode, feel free to ask. With that, I would also like to introduce you to our latest product. We launched Docs by Hashnode in private beta around 2 weeks from now. If you want to see how it looks, go to this URL hshno.de/docs. Favorite, if you can, please also share the link in the chat so that others can look at a docs product. But I'll just give you a quick review to show how it looks. And we have built in with all the good features that Hashnode has plus more. So if your company or if you are looking for a documentation tool, you know that Hashnode has one now, and currently it's in private beta. So if you would like to sign up for access, just make sure to join the waitlist, or if you would like to see a demo, you can also book a demo from here. That's about Hashnode Talks. And if you have any questions, you can also ask us on the chat or on Discord, on a Discord community, or on Twitter, LinkedIn, or anywhere. We are all very active there. Now, moving forward to the agenda. So, like I mentioned, what we will be learning today is GraphQL fundamentals, and we'll also be learning how to build with GraphQL APIs in production. I'll be the one who will just introduce you to GraphQL, but the majority part will be favorite, who will show you more fundamentals of GraphQL and how you can actually use those query in code and build something in production. I am pretty excited, and I hope you are excited as well. So let's not waste any more time and get started quickly. First, what is GraphQL? So, if anybody here is hearing about GraphQL for the first time, it is a query language for APIs. I'm not sure what your experience level is, but APIs, it forms the fundamental of software development these days. More, at least if you are interviewing for a job role, or you're learning about software development, or you're learning to code, APIs is something that you will come across either sooner or later. So if you're learning about APIs for the first time, you will be also introduced to GraphQL, which is why we're bringing up this webinar. So let's get back to track. So GraphQL, it's a query language for APIs that lets clients request specific data in a single call. So, if you have been introduced to APIs, you must have also heard about REST APIs. And REST and GraphQL APIs do differ. And the main difference is that when you are using a REST API, it uses multiple endpoints with fixed data structures. Whereas when you're using GraphQL, it will use a single endpoint where clients define exactly what they need. So like what happens is, like, this approach, it will reduce the overfetching and underfetching of data, and it makes it more efficient and flexible. So that in all is about introducing you to GraphQL. Now let us go ahead and see what are some of the key concepts of GraphQL. You must have heard about the term like schema, types, fields, queries, and mutations. But what do they mean? So, schemas are the ones that define the structure of your API, the types of data that can be queried, and how do they relate to each other. And types are basically like, oh, these are the building blocks of schema, and it represents the structure of data. It could be string, it could be user, it could be integer, it could be different types. And the third one is fields. So these fields are specific pieces of data that you are requesting from the type while you're writing a query. And what are queries? So the queries are the method by which you request a specific data. For example, you have like I'll show you about hashnode APIs, and you'll see that there are different types of queries which is performing a particular action and is getting you a particular output. So that is where queries are. We'll just see it in an example. And mutations, if you have heard about the actions like create, update, delete, retrieve. So these, you can actually perform these actions, and mutations are used to modify the data and perform this action. So this are like the schema, types, fields, queries, and mutations. These five things are the most key concepts of GraphQL. And once you have a better understanding of how each of these work, you will also understand, your understanding of GraphQL will get better, and you'll also learn how to actually use it on code. Now let me give you an example with hashnode's GraphQL API. So I'll go to, oops, Google and search hashnode GraphQL API. You'll see that we have an API page that has API docs. So if you are hearing about GraphQL APIs in Hashnode for the first time, we'll link this page to you so that you can go ahead and play around with the GraphQL APIs. But there's so much that you can do, and Favorite will also show you how you can actually play around with the Hashnode GraphQL APIs and build something of your own. So the documentation here mentions everything that is needed and how you can build with it. And it also has an API playground. The link to that is here in the homepage. Just click on open GQL playground and you'll have it. So this is the playground that we have, and this is an example query that I just used from a documentation itself. So just by reading it, what does it, what do you think it does? So the name, as it suggests, is publication, and then I'm sending my host name, and then I'm sending some data like is time, title, about, and it should be in markdown. So I am expecting that this should return me data about my publication. I'll run that and I'll see that it gives like, if is it a, it asks if it's is team, which means that Hashnode has two type of publications. One is the individual blog publication that you have, and the another one is the team publication. So this one is not a team publication, which is why it returns boolean type false. Then it also returns the title, and there is nothing in my output, which is why you see null. Now we just talked about the schema, types, and fields, and let us see one by one where are we actually using it in this query. Like I mentioned that here publication is the name of the query. That okay, you using this name, you'll probably get an idea about what you are trying to get or fetch from this query. And in the queries field, so okay, now what it does is it takes an argument, this publication, like it queries a field publication, and it takes an argument host, which is of type string. As you can see, that is in double quote, so it's of type string. And then it has, it has other fields like I mentioned in my slide, and the fields are is title, sorry, is team, title, and about. And then each of these fields also has a type, like this one is boolean, and if you go here, this one is string. Then we have about, so this should, this gives you the about section of the publication. It is an object with a nested field time, and the markdown should also return string. So we just talked about schemas, we just talked about type, we just talked about fields and types, and you could see exactly how we used a GraphQL query, run it on a playground to use those concepts. So once you know this four or five, sorry, let me go back here. Once you know what a schema means, what types are, what fields are, what queries are, and mutation is something that favorite will cover in the later half, your concepts of GraphQL are clear from now on. With that, I will hand over the rest of the part to favorite, and I hope you now have a little bit of understanding of what GraphQL is or what are some of the key concepts. Now, favorite, over to you. I'll stop presenting my screen. I'll add you here and welcome.
All right, welcome, welcome, welcome. So let's get coding. But before we start coding, let's elaborate on what Amantika has already said. So whenever um Amantika, please could you
Yep.
present my yes. Okay. So by the end of this section, this is what we'll be building. We'll be building on our starter kit. So Hashnode has a starter kit here. So you could go to github.com /starter kit and clone the starter kit before we proceed. So this is what we'll be building. We're building just this followers page with the knowledge of what we'll be learning in this session. Be, yeah, we'll be building the followers page where um, you could load more of the followers of this publication user. So yes, now to add on the building knowledge of what we've learned, how do we make these query calls on the client on our JavaScript application? Either be it a React application, a Vue application, right? All of them are still making use of JavaScript. So the goal of this session is to keep things simple. So we'll be starting with just basic JavaScript first. So let's say we have a query, right? Obviously, we start with a variable. So we have a variable which is named query.
Sorry, favorite. Can you just zoom in a bit? Like
Oh,
it's
okay.
the
Okay.
yes, this
So,
looks perfect. Thank you.
all right. So this application I'm using here, it's called Run.js. So it's a fun playground to like just test things out, write to JavaScript code, and then you see it executing live on the right hand side. So let's say we have a query, and query usually written in a string, right? And so we want to query a user. We want to get, let's name the query. So a query should have a the query name. So get user data. So this is the structure by which a schema is formed. You have a name for the query, then we want to get the user field. Now, a field in GraphQL could take in arguments. So these arguments could be anything. But if you check, so by the way, this sample we're making use of Hashnode API, but similar APIs would be used in the same format, right? So in the Hashnode documentation, we have user, and under user, you would notice it has an argument, which is username. So now we want to get the username. I'm going to make the username favorite. So we'll be getting the details of my blog from, yes. So now what are the fields we want to get from this user, which is favorite myself? We would like to get the ID. We could get the username, and we could also get the profile picture. So how do I know all these fields exist? Basically, you check the documentation to know what fields that are present. So for every GraphQL um, API out there, there's always a documentation for you to check. So even the playground has its own documentation. Amantika didn't mention this, so I'll just mention this. So if you go, the documentation with this is similar, but using the playground's documentation is actually much detailed, and I'll show you why. But let's for now let's go over this. So let's also add the name field. Now we have our query. To ensure that it works, you could copy this and test it on the playground. So let's create a new tab and paste this here, then run the query. Yes, so we can see we get the username as favorite, we get the name as favorite Jome, and we get the profile image, which you could load on the browser. Yes, so we know, sorry about that. So we know for a fact that the query is working. But now get how do we get this data on the client? Right? We want to make use of this data on our JavaScript app, for example. So then we need to make a fetch call to the endpoint. So the endpoint is https://api.hashnode.com. In the body, the method will be a post. So one thing for everyone to know is that every GraphQL operations, the methods are always posts, right? Unlike the REST API where we have get, we have post, we have updates. So GraphQL, irrespective of whatever you're doing, either you're mutating the data, that which is updating the data, or you are getting a data, you will be making use of the same method, which is the post method. Now that we have that, we also had the headers. So the headers taking the content type, which should be application/JSON. Um, yes, and then the body bug that will be JSON.stringify. So we need to stringify. We need to make this query. We need to turn it into a serialized JSON. So we add the query here. So just by doing this, everything should work. Sorry. Then we need to add this bit to the code. Okay. Then the data. Okay. Now we have some error where errors are always not fun to deal with.
Yeah, this is what demagogues are for. It happens with everybody. I'm also looking for the extra R. Request is not a valid JSON.
Syntax error, unexpected token R. But then there's no R anywhere. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy this bit. It's practically the same thing and paste it here.
I hope it works now.
and how it works. So I
Woohoo!
must have done something wrong. I okay. Okay, I can't tell what is different, but yes. So now it works. So essentially, this is how to make the most simplest GraphQL request. So you don't need to make use of something fancy like URL curl, but I'll be showing that in this example also. But then, as a beginner, starting out with GraphQL, just on the client. Now, I should say this, GraphQL also has another aspect of it, which is handling the GraphQL server. We're not going to be covering that in this video, so that is beyond the scope of what we're going to be showcasing today. All we're going to be showcasing today is how you can make use of a GraphQL API and use it on your client's app, right? So this is an example of how you can do that. So we've just queried this user, and we have the data. So this is exactly what we got from the playground. Now, if you so now if you check the documentation, there is this dollar sign username that we have going on here. And if you are new to GraphQL, you might wonder, what does this mean? Essentially, the dollar sign, then the name is actually a variable. So when creating variables in GraphQL, you make use of the dollar sign. So if I were to, sorry, excuse me. So currently I had coded the value favorite, but if I want to make use of another username, for example, Amantica, I could just do this here and I would get Amantica's data. So where GraphQL shines over REST API is you get exactly what you need to get. So you don't overfetch. Just like in this sample, I requested for the ID, the username field, the name field, and the profile field. And those were the fields I got. As you can see, the ID, the username, name, and profile. So now, let's make this a variable. So if we were to add username here, we would get an error because yes. So the variable is not defined in the operation. In the operation get user data. So this query operation name is get user data. We need to define the variable here first before we make use of the variable in the query. And then while defining the variable, we also need to define the scalar type. So it could be scalar type, it could be object type. Object type are essentially um they're essentially ordered like, so we have five basic scalar type, right? Which are integer, string, boolean. But however, which I think Amantica also mentioned those scalar types. However, in GraphQL we could have object types. But in this case, we'll be making use of a scalar type, which should be string. Be making so the exclamation mark is saying that it is compulsory. So now we would need to create a new variable. So the variable a variable named variable would have the username as Amantica. So in this instance, it would be getting Amantica's data. So this should actually be variables, and then we make use of it here, and everything still works. So now you can change the variable here however you want. Now in GraphQL, there are so many ways of getting user data. So we could have nested queries. So this is the same thing, but then here we have nested queries like social media links and badges. So social media links, you notice it's a nested query because we have websites, GitHub. So these are the links for this social media. The way you get to know about if we have nested queries is from the GraphQL schema, which you'd find on the documentation. So you can see the structure of this GraphQL of the user query. We have bow, which has a nested query and nested field rather. So if we were to look for the social media, where would that be? Yes, so we can find them here. Now you notice while looking at this the documentation, there's something weird here. There's something called fragments. So what are fragments? Basically, fragments are bits of units of um of a, of the fields that you can make use of. You can reuse fragments. So you could define a fragment once, which is basically a type that has several other fields. So now if we go to this section that has fragments, we could define a fragment like this. So here I'm still making use of the user query, but then I defined a fragment first. So let's just we could start from okay. Let me just walk you through what I've done here. So there's a fragment, and all this would be making use of this in the starter kit code base. So that's why I'm walking you through the process of creating fragments and how to reuse fragments. So we'll define a fragment, and I named the fragment post details on the type post. So this fragment is to get the post of this specific user. So if we look at the documentation once again, under user, there is a field called post, and post has an edge. So for so essentially, anytime you see edges nodes, for Hashnode API, it means it's a pagination. And GraphQL, there are different types of pagination actually. But here at Hashnode, in our API, we make use of cursor-based pagination and offset-based pagination. Yes. So this type of pagination is an offset-based pagination, right? Where you add the page and then the page size. So in this field, we have something in the nodes rather. So the nodes is where you get the post. So we have the nodes post fragment. Now, so there's a shortcut to this, but I'm taking you through this process for a purpose, right? So you understand what this means. So when you see post fragments here, you could literally scroll down to locate the type of post. So the type of post is all the way down here at P. So you locate P, O, P. Yes, post. Then you see the fields that are associated with this post. So this post is essentially the fragment which we saw earlier. So it's called the post fragment. It's still a type, right? If you're familiar with TypeScript, you'd you'd understand. So all this so GraphQL makes use of a type system where everything is literally a type, right? And this type has several fields. Now, under the post fragment, we notice we have the ID, we have slug, we have title, and several other fields. Now, since we know we want to get the fragment of the post. This name could be anything. The fragment name could be anything, but we need to specify what where this fragment is going, what type is it going to be on. That's why post is essential here. So this post cannot be anything because we know for a fact that the post type is what is being used on under the nodes, under the post field of, yeah, in the nodes field. So we here we specify the ID, the title, the brief, and publish art field, and then we make use of the fragments inside of the string. Yeah, we include the fragments in the query, and then using, I'm going to take this out. We'll do this. Okay. Now we have the fragments that we created here, the post details fragments. We're making use of it in the query. We could as well ignore the fragments and just did ID and like title, brief, and published at. Since we know what the, and then yes, we get the same data. We get the ID, we get the title, we get the brief, and we get when the article was published. But then, if you notice, we have arguments in the post field. So a field can also take in arguments. Now, I mentioned earlier that whenever you see the nodes in a as a nested field, it means the above field is it has pagination, right? So we need to implement pagination for that field. Yes. Now the API documentation does not show you that. However, from the documentation on the playground, you would be able to tell which um which field requires an argument. Now on the user type, and the user type has post, and you notice post takes in the page size, the page, sort by, and filter. So user post sort is an example of an object type. User post connection filter is an example of an object type. These two are not required. You can see the post requires the page size and the page arguments based on the exclamation mark you see by the scalar value or by the type. Yes. So yes, so that is why we are making use of the arguments and passing in the appropriate type. Ideally, this type should be a variable where you can dynamically change. However, I did it like this just to showcase this example. So on the very first page, we're just getting two nodes. That is why here we have the first node, right, of the article published, and then the second node of an article published. And then here is basically the same thing as what we did here the very first time. So now that we've gone through the basics and we understand, and I hope we all understand the basics of how GraphQL is, let's work towards achieving this on the start kit. So building this simple layout on the start kit where we get of all the followers.
I loved the demo that you just showed, favorite. It was so easy to follow and also understand what it's exactly doing. I'm sure our viewers who are learning about GraphQL for the first time has a lot to take away. So no more distractions for you. Just go ahead, and I'm also excited to see how you exactly do this.
Yes. So I know I just mentioned would go over how we came about the followers, but there's one other bit I should have mentioned before jumping into this, which is mutations. We need to talk about mutations. So mutation essentially is how um you update the data and how you make changes to your data, the data you have currently, the data you're getting from your GraphQL API. If you ever need to make updates or changes regarding those data, you need to make use of mutation. And with Hashnode API, we make use. You have to make use of a personal access token key, right? Which you could get from your dashboard. So you could get it then from settings. And Mantica, you could share the URL with the group, with everyone watching live. So you could get your personal access token from your settings page. So just go to settings/dashboard and then you copy this. So now let's go over writing a mutation. I'm just going to come here. Um, yes, so I'm going to clear what we have here and change this to mutation. And then we have a mutation. So let's just not just write blindly. So ideally, as a fresher, you'd want to check, as a beginner to GraphQL, do you want to check what mutations you have available, right? So from the API documentation, we have several operations, several mutation operations we can execute, right? There's a lot. Which should we pick? Yes, so I'm going to pick the create draft mutation. So this will allow you to create a new draft post. And once you make use of this mutation, you'd see your post on the Hashnode editor where you can make further edits and decide to publish the post after you're done editing the post. So this is the mutation we're making use of. Now we can see the structure. It says you write a mutation and then you give that mutation a name. Then the input takes in a object type, which is, so let's just copy this aspect, right? There's nothing like, yeah, it's, as a developer, it's good to copy and paste. There's nothing wrong there.
We all
So
do that. That's
yes.
perfectly fine.
Yes. So okay. So let me just ensure the brackets are the same. So we have this. These are no brackets, by the way. These are parentheses. They're still brackets, but the appropriate name are parentheses. Yeah. So we have 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay. So we can also get this log. So what you get back is not important in a mutation, except you want to make use of the data you're getting back and for things like optimistic updates, right? You don't want to refresh the data, you just want to show the updated state. We will not be doing that in today's session, right? But if I left this blank and I passed in the data I wanted to update, everything should still work fine. But for now, but then what is this create draft input, right? We need to go through the documentation again to ensure that we know what create draft input is. So you could click on the type and then it would take you to the type definition in this section. So yeah, you notice there are some fields that are required. So we have publication ID is required because you can see the exclamation mark. Another required field, the tag is also, where is tags? So tags is also required. Those are the fields that are required. So other fields are optional. But I don't know why you'll be creating a draft without a title and yes, so we're going to do that. We're going to create a draft with a title, a subtitle, and then we'll see it on our editor, on the Hashnode editor. Now to do this, so we have a variable. We could then we have inputs. Now Now the inputs will take in a title, which is a new post, subtitle, hello world, and the slug would be new posts two.
Favorite, I think above we have mentioned slug twice. If you
You
scroll up,
mentioned okay,
not here, up. If you go up, up.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, oh, okay, okay. Thank you for catching that. Okay, so then the publication ID is also required. So if you're following along, you can get your publication ID from your dashboard. You could also get it from the API, but then getting it from the dashboard is the fastest way. Yes, so this ID here is your publication ID. So you could copy that and and paste the ID here. So I'm not going to paste it. Um I could just well, let me just paste the ID. Um then tags would be an empty. I don't want to use make use of any tag. So you could leave that as an empty array. And there we have it. So you could take this mutation, the query would be a mutation. You still need to make use of the query property. And yes, we have errors, variable inputs got invalid. Okay. Hmm. Okay. Variable inputs got invalid value. Title, subtitle, slug. Should I process the subtitle? Oh, I spelled. This is why it's good to read the errors properly, not just assume. So I spelled subtitle wrong. You must be authenticated. Yes, like I mentioned, every mutation, not every, there are some GraphQL API that allows you to perform authentication without um being I mean that allows you to perform mutations without being authenticated. However, while using Hashnode API, you need to be authenticated, right? For that, we would add authentication here, authentication where we have, and then we need to pass in the authentication key, which we get from here. So we copy this, and I'm going to be deleting this key after this session, so no one should use my key. Please, I encourage you to make use of your own keys, your own authentication keys. Then here should be, yeah, okay, you must be authenticated. Okay, it should be authorization, not authentication. Sorry about that. So now on the editor, you'd yes, so you'll be able to find the new post, hello post, new post, and hello world as a subtitle. So that is basically how to create mutation in the most basic way, right? So yeah, I'm just making use of the fetch API, nothing fancy, nothing specific to just React or Vue or whatever library that are out there. So now, after learning all this, let's move on to this project we should be showcasing all we've learned. So now I would need every one of you to clone this repository. Once you've cloned the repository, follow the steps that is outlined here to run, sorry, to run the repository online. So the first thing, you have to change your directory to the hash node theme. So it's the hash node theme would be making use of, and then you copy the environment keys into the env.local file, and then you install the dependencies, and then you start the server. So I'm going to start the server here. I have done the previous mentioned steps already. So I'm just going to start the server and see if everything is working.
Favorite, can you also zoom this ID, your ID a bit?
Okay. It's it okay now?
A little more?
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, this is good.
Okay. So okay. Let me just make sure everything is working fine. Yes, so everything is working fine. So what I'm going to do now is to, so I'm not going to walk through the whole process of how the starter kit was built. So that is not the goal of this session. I'm just going to go through exactly how we can make use of a query in the starter kit. So in the case where you want to add a query to the starter kit and you want to make a fetch, you want to make a request. So that's what I'm going to be showcasing in today's session. So in the query, let's specify. So what we want to do essentially is we want to get all our followers. So let's say in our blog, we want to be able to showcase to everyone that, hey, we have these followers directly on our blog. So currently, the way you would do that is from your profile, you'd click on the followers tab to view all the profiles, all the followers you have, right? But in the case where you're in your blog, right? So this is the power of Hashnode Headless CMS. Actually, you could have your, you could do whatever you want to do because you have access to the API, right? But please use it wisely. So yeah, in this example, this is what would be working. So would this all be working on rather? So let's create a new page, right? So the page would be followers. We have to be quick here. We're running out of time. So we have a new page, followers. Okay. Why is my okay? uh, Okay. Okay, this is not what I want. I'm just going to fix it. Export defaults. Followers. So this is a new page. In the page, we want to, before we dive into the page, let's understand what we need to do API wise. So the followers, we still get them from the query, from the user query. So under the user query, there's an option to get, there's a field called followers, and you can see the field is also paginated. Yes. So we copy, let's create the GraphQL first, the GraphQL query. So we name it user user follower.graphql. So ideally, you'd want to peep and see how the previous the current GraphQL queries that on the code base are, so that you know what you are writing. But since I already know what I'm doing, I'm just going to proceed. And basically, it's still the same thing I've shown everyone here. So where you have a query. So essentially this, you can just copy and paste. However, there are some things that are different. So let's stick with the same file name, user follower, and we want to be able to pass in the username. So the username is going to be a string. The user here would make use of that same variable, user username. We want to get the followers, right? So we make use of the followers. L is missing, followers, and then the followers is paginated. So we need to get the page. We can make use of one, and then the page size is the maximum page size is 20. I know this because I've interacted with the API. So if you exceed 20, it should throw an error. So yeah, I'm going to make use of a fragment. So user fragments. I don't need to do this, but I'm just to emphasize on what we've learned in this session. I'm going to make use. I have to create this fragment because I'm making use of it. Yes. So this is essentially how to get the user followers. So I want this to also be dynamic, so I could dynamically load more followers. Like here, I could still click load more, and then more followers will be appended to the list. Yes. So to do that, we need to get more, so add more arguments here. So correct, we make them required, and then we make use of them here. So page, and then the page size. Yes. But now this is supposed to show an error because it doesn't know what user is. Yep. So we have unknown fragment user. So we need to create the fragment user. To do that, so we go user.graphql, and here we have a fragment. We name it user on user. So the fragment name is user, and we know it's on the user type because from the API documentation we can see that so we're getting the nodes, and then the fields that are in the nodes are of the user fragment, which is essentially the user type. So knowing that, we create this, and then we specify the fields we need, right? So we need the ID. It's always a good practice to always request for the ID from any schema type. So we need the ID, we need the username, we need the profile picture, then the name, and then the tagline. So this is what we need. Now the error should go away because now we've defined the user fragment, and we've also defined the query schema. Now all we need to do is to build the page and then the layouts, and then show the user data. Now to do this, if you check from the starter kit, you notice I'm not going to go over all the details, but then the app provider, because I want to keep the layouts consistent, I still want to utilize the header and I want everything to work right. So I'm going to copy these bits of the code and paste it here also. So A skill everyone should learn how to do is to copy well and understand you should actually understand what you are doing. So um I would advise everyone to the code base is pretty much easy to like walk through. I mean, once I'm done, I'll walk through it so that everyone has an idea of what is going on. For the get server side props, because this publication is going to be coming from the server, this is more of Next.js specific things. So I'm going to paste this here, make sure I have all the right props. Come on, loading, 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 loading. Okay. Okay, so what I'm doing now, I'm just reusing some things. I would walk through the entire process once I am done. So this should be from GraphQL requests. Import the this and this, and also the header. So here we have the header. It's home true. It's home true. So the publication is going to come from the pop. From the props. So the prop is we'll fix the type later. So far what we've done is, so I should go to the followers page. Hmm. Okay, okay. So the server needs to be running on port 3000. Let me just, that's, I want to fix that now.
It's on 3000 now.
Yes.
Oops.
Wait, let me see. Maybe I'm doing something wrong here. Followers. Hmm.
Have you named the page
Oh,
as followers, or is it,
oh, I know what I'm doing.
what is it?
Yeah, so yeah, the problem is because of this.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
you should, yeah. So another lesson: don't copy um
Checking what
without
you're
checking
blindly
what's,
copying. It's wrong.
yeah. So the rewrite was, yeah. So yeah. So I should be returning the prop as publication. So this publication would then be passed to here to this file, which I can make use of in the app provider. So once I save this, it should work now as expected, hopefully. Yes, so it's working. And to prove it's working, we could type in anything here and then we can see that here. So yes, it's working now. So let's proceed. Let's fix the type for this quickly. So props is equals to publication. That is not the correct type. It should be it should be fragments. Yes. Yes. So we need to have. So the next step is to make use of the use query hook from our URQL to get the followers data. So the query is going to be user followers. Um, user follower document. Hmm. Okay, for some reason, it seems it does not exist yet. However, the code gen on this code base, which is responsible for creating the necessary types, should have created it. So, user follower. So everything here is working. Okay. Um. Hmm. Okay. To save time, I'm just going to walk through the finished demo. So I'll stop the server here and switch to the finished demo. Zoom in so everyone can see and run the code base here. So what I was not getting was the document was not created. So the query document was not created for some reason. The code gen failed. So ideally, um since we wrote query the query user followers, the code gen should generate a document which we can make use of here. So there will be a document. So it's because I have an idea of what is supposed to be generated. That's why I know documents. So ideally, as a newbie, you could make use of um you could read more on the URQL library to figure out how to make use of their hook, right? The use query hook. But the strategies that we've mentioned earlier, yeah, still applies everywhere, whereby you define the query and then you pass in variables. So these variables are being passed to the schema that you've defined. There's a bunch of React stuff happening here in order for us to load more data. So the data we are passing, we are passing it to a hook so that we can show the followers that we have, right? Now, once the button is clicked, once the button is clicked, we load more followers. So if we check the load more, basically we are updating the page, this page variable, or the state rather, to 2, which fetches the new data on the second page. So I hope with this little demo, you all understand the basic fundamentals of how GraphQL works, how you can make use of GraphQL. By the way, if you want to see the full details of this code you could check the blog, yeah, where you'd see the full code and you could experiment with it. Yes, so Amantika.
Yep. And with that, I think we call it a close. But favorite, I really loved the entire demo that you just showed. Even I was learning a lot of new things from you. I hope that our audience really liked it and got the fundamentals of GraphQL and also learned how to actually use it in a production code base. So I thoroughly enjoyed, and I really thank you for giving so much time and effort into building this demo. I loved it, and I hope that our viewers also enjoyed it. And with that, I think we can wrap it up. And for everybody who is watching us today, we will see you again next week with another hands on webinar. If you have any title or any idea suggestion, feel free to drop them in the comments below, or you can also DM us or drop it on our Discord community. And I will look forward to that. And I'll see you all again next week. With that, I'll wrap it up. Is there anything else favorite that you want to talk about?
Yes, so if anyone has any question regarding how to make use of GraphQL, we actually have a section in our Discord server for programming helps. So if you
Yep.
have any programming related question and we can assist you, we'll definitely assist you. So regarding this section, if you have questions also regarding the sections, feel free to message me on the server, on Discord server, or anywhere you find me. So I'll be happy to help. Yeah, thank you very much for listening and joining us.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye.
Okay then, bye bye.